Good morning, everyone. Welcome to an episode of Coffee Break with Card, La Hora del Cafecito's new sister show. My name is 𝗓𝗂𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗻, and I would like to welcome you to the show. Coffee Break with Card is a program dedicated to all those in our community who are living with autism, to their family members, and all those who support them. So come on in, join us at the table, and sign on in the comment section below, and let us know if you're having a cup of coffee with us. We'd love to say hello to you. In today's show, we are going to be talking about the fact that June is the start of hurricane season, as you know. So we want to be talking about and discussing how you can prepare your loved one with autism to face the tropical storms or hurricane season and how to keep your family safe. So join us. We'd love to say hello to you. I'm sorry. I'm going back into my memory, but we'd love to talk about this type of information and review some of the resources that we have to share with you. Okay, so let's start out by introducing your coffee hostesses for today. And as I mentioned, my name is 𝗓𝗂𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗔, and I am a card consultant assigned to the primary age group. And professionally, I am a pediatric physical therapist as well as a special education teacher. I am joined today by Olivia McDonald. So, buenos días, Olivia. I'm also joined in, you're muted. I'm also joined in by 𝗜𝗳 Camposano. Buenos días, 𝗜𝗳.
Buenos días, hello.
Buenos dias. There we go.
I do that all the time, and then I can't control the cursor at that moment. Anyway, as you know, Olivia McDonald is an excellent professional in the field of public health. She is a card consultant assigned to the primary age group, and just like me. And she is also the mother of a beautiful baby boy. He is getting older and more hair. That's for sure. And she also has a younger brother diagnosed with autism. So welcome, Olivia.
Thank you, Lourdes. Yeah, it's energetic toddler at this point.
Anyway, I don't know how you guys do it. And so 𝗜𝗳 Camposano is an excellent professional in the field of social work, and as of recently already passed her bars exam. Thank you, God. Right, that's over with. The hard part is over with. So she is also a card consultant assigned to the young adults group, and she is the mother of two beautiful preteens. And maybe too much. You don't even want to go there. She also has a physical disability, so she brings in a very important perspective to this show. We are always happy to have her on the show. So welcome, 𝗜𝗳. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I'm always happy to be here.
Right. Anyway, Jasmine Castellano was not able to join us today, but we want to, I'm sure she'll be around here somewhere soon, as she always watches us. So we want to wish her our love, send her our love, and she'll be back next week. So great. So anyway, before we get started, we want to review the rules by which we want to adhere during this programming to ensure that we keep a safe environment for all of us. Remember to keep an open mind, maintain a positive attitude, and use respectful language so that we can all feel safe. Okay? So today, Olivia is going to be bringing us the information, and we will be asking, 𝗜𝗳 and I will be asking her questions. So, but before we get started, Olivia, is there audience members we want to say good morning to before we get started?
Yes. So good morning to our colleague, Chris Darkin.
Hi, Chris.
And also Mark and fresh from her return from Portugal, our #1 fan, 𝗓𝗂𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗻.
Oh, 𝗓𝗂𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗻, we miss you. Yes, welcome back. Chris is going head to head with you. Let me tell you that much.
I know. You have competition, Mom.
They're competing for that #1 fan, the sticker. Anyway, so thank you guys for being here. For those of you just joining us, just remember that June marked the start of this year's hurricane season. So in today's program, we will be discussing what you can do to prepare your loved ones with autism for facing the tropical storm or hurricane season, and how to keep your family safe. So join us, and let's start talking about this on the show. So let's get started. My first question to you, Olivia, is going to be, what are some of the additional items that families should have included in their emergency kits for their autistic members, their family?
Yes. So any visual supports that can help communicate important information, such as hurricane social stories, visual schedules, behavior charts, etc., would be very helpful. Any communication devices and their chargers, if it's an electronic device. It's also a good idea to have like a low-tech communication board like this one, just in case. Preferred items that can help reduce anxiety, like blankets, toys. It's also recommended to have all of your important documents together. And, this is not just like your home insurance policy, but it should also include the most current copy of your child's IEP, evaluations, any diagnosis reports, test scores, Medicaid or insurance cards, important phone numbers like for primary care providers, etc. Medications, especially if your loved one with autism has any kind of prescriptions, it's important to at least have a couple weeks supply of those on hand. And any supports like sensory tools, headphones, especially those like noise canceling headphones, toys, or activities that can help the autistic individual through, particularly challenging situations. Those are kind of all some really great items to add to the standard recommendations for an emergency kit.
Yes, and I mentioned in the Spanish version of the show that you always bring about those ideas of what else we need to be thinking about that we might forget about. And I love the idea of not forgetting to bring the latest copy of the IEP, because God forbid we should be locked out of our homes, for whatever reason, the home gets damaged, there is flooding that does not permit us to go back to our home, and we were forced evacuation or something like that, and we need to be moving to another county or whatever. And we need to have that. God forbid we don't have electronic access to that information. So that was a great idea. So to add it to those documents that are so important that we, always think about, but might forget about that. So
it's great to have it all together.
Yeah, that was great.
Round and go.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us of that.
Olivia, what can be done to help children or adults with autism prepare mentally for a hurricane?
So, a hurricane is a scary and stressful situation for anyone, but it can be especially challenging for autistic individuals if they struggle adapting to change or if they have sensory issues. So I think taking the time to communicate the changes they're likely to experience ahead of time is very, very important. If families will be sheltering at home, there might be loss of electricity and water. They might not be able to have their preferred foods. Their typical schedule is likely to be different during not only the storm, it's the few days before the storm, during the hurricane, and afterwards. Your initial plan might be to stay at home and to kind of shelter in place, but later on there might be a need to evacuate. And so, plans do change. There are often tornadoes that accompany hurricanes. So, everyone might suddenly need to get into a small windowless space. The loud noises, the changes in atmospheric pressure, not having air conditioning, these are all things that can be very challenging from a sensory perspective. And they may not have access to sensory strategies that normally helps them to regulate, like jumping on their trampoline or being able to use their swing or swimming in a pool. Their house might look different temporarily, due to having like wood boarded up on the windows or sandbags. But it may also experience changes that will take a while to fix, such as damage with the wind, falling trees, and water. So social stories, photos from previous hurricanes, and videos on YouTube are all great ways that can help to communicate this information and kind of all these different scenarios. The one caveat I will say with choosing videos and photos is to make sure that they're helpful and they're supporting a point you're making. It shouldn't be something like a 3-hour-long video compilation of the worst hurricane disasters that, something like that is only going to cause anxiety for your loved one with autism, anxiety for you. And, it's just, you guys are just going to be imagining like kind of worst case scenario. Information instead should be focused on what they will need to do to stay safe. For example, staying inside, away from the windows, any alternatives they can do to typical activities. And if there are any alternative sensory tools, they should also validate their feelings and also emphasize that the whole family finds the situation hard. Again, it's very challenging. If they're able, participating in hurricane preparation can help with feeling a little bit more like of a sense of control over the situation. And this can be small things like selecting what food will be available, helping to move items inside the house, or choosing what board games or puzzles like the whole family is going to play together during the storm. So these are just kind of some recommendations that can help with that mental preparation.
And I think out of everything that you said here, I think one of the important things to remember is how the emphasis needs to be on preparedness, meaning months ahead of time, not waiting until the hurricane is here to then start this process of preparedness, to then start viewing the videos. It should be something that is being discussed ahead of time. But also, I always remember how you say that with your brother, for example, too much too soon gives him anxiety.
Yeah.
So you have to know your own loved ones, right? So you have to know when it's too soon to give the information, when it's too late. So sort of gauge it based on that. So maybe dropping a hint before.
Yeah. So I think like for that example, it would be like kind of explaining like what a hurricane is in general, especially if like I know we have like a number of families who are new to Florida and have never been around, hurricanes. So just maybe that's something that you can just explain the concept, and that's very, and then if there is the possibility, or closer to then maybe discussing like specifics about, okay, the next few days we're going to have to do this,
So maybe what a hurricane is, or what sort of things are done to prepare for a hurricane, what sort of things might happen. And
that tip of, that tip of helping with the preparation, it could be helping with those collecting of those items that, you should be preparing now, like the water, the food, that also kind of helps feeling like, okay, we're prepared, we're ready, and it's done in a calm way. There's not panicked. That also kind of help with minimizing that anxiety.
Exactly. So that was a great idea. So anyway, my question, anything else that the family should consider in the event that they would need to evacuate?
Yeah. So this is not autism specific, but please, please, please take evacuation orders seriously and always double check which flood zone your home is in. Many flood area maps have changed recently, so maybe you weren't in the first 2 flood zones, but now you are. Or, the areas kind of maybe immediately surrounding your house. And so you won't be able to get out easily to get supplies and things like that. I'd also recommend explaining the concept of evacuation ahead of time. Again, not right before you have to leave, to minimize the child or adult with autism's anxiety about the situation. And also forewarn them before departing that there's likely going to be a lot of traffic. If it's safe to do so and is possible, choose a family member or friend's home to evacuate to. Not only could this mean that the autistic individual is familiar with the location, but it would also make it easier to prepare a social story ahead of time or have things like supportive items on hand. And Lourdes, this was a point actually that you brought up in when we did this version of the show in Spanish. The other thing too, which is good of having like a designated place kind of ahead of time, is if there are any potential dangers, like, if your loved one with autism is particularly attracted to water and your family member has a pool, you can also put some of those safety precautions in place so that that's not like a temptation during the evacuation to their home. So, again, I know it's not a possibility for everyone, but that could also kind of help with minimizing anxiety about the situation.
Yeah. We did a show in Spanish, and I was just looking through the YouTube side, because again, this show, Coffee Break with Card, is a spin-off of a show we started 3 years ago. So we definitely have plenty of versions of of episodes in Spanish, some of which were done in bilingual format actually. But I don't see that we did that version that I pass on in the Spanish side, where we did when we go visiting family members during like the holidays, like Thanksgiving and Christmas. We did a show about that and what considerations to keep in mind in terms of safety and things like that. So we might just end up doing a show. We should do a show about that and bring it up because there are considerations to keep in mind, safety considerations, sensorial considerations that need to be kept in mind when we do go visit places, even hotels and staying on hotels. I always remember the story of a family that went to a hotel and the child thought that they were moving into that place and was confused and having a meltdown because they thought that their home was gone. So
yes, that's again with that idea of evacuation, explaining it's a temporary thing.
It's a temporary thing, and they don't understand that they're not losing their place. It's not a permanent sentence. So those are things that need to be accounted for. And so, but who's to say? We take things for granted, and those things we don't think about until it's time to. So this is the reason for our show. And so we might just do a version of do the show again, but this time in English also, so that we can have our English speaking audience benefit from that information. So those are great points.
Olivia, I wanted to know, are there shelter options that accommodate someone with autism?
So special needs shelters exist, but they do require an annual pre-registration. So families can contact their local emergency management center for more information on the process and the necessary forms, or they can complete the special needs shelter program intake form on the Florida Department of Health website. Service animals are allowed at shelters, even those that don't typically accept pets. But it is recommended that you bring the animal's vaccination and license records just in case. It's also recommended that families bring their hurricane supply kit with them to the shelter. The shelter will have food, water, and basic sanitary facilities, but they're not going to have large supplies of extra food, medications, or extra items that might make your stay at the shelter more comfortable. And shelters can be very overwhelming locations from a sensory perspective. So it's always good for families to also be prepared for that.
Yeah. And to remember those things that are unique for our loved ones, you know, with autism, you know, whatever their special toys, their special sensory items, their special foods that they like.
That's another reason to bring the kit, because hopefully you have some of those things on hand in there already.
Yeah, exactly. So anything else you would like to share with our audience?
Yes. So there are a number of safety concerns that the families need to be aware of. So preparing for a hurricane, you know, like we've already mentioned, it can be very stressful, but families need to be extra vigilant of children and adults who elope during this time. There was a very sad case of a 5-year-old girl with autism who left the house during tropical storm Isaias, and then unfortunately she died as a result. You know, there can be rushing water, dangerous debris in the flood water, or even downed power lines in water. And it might also be difficult or impossible for first responders to search and find the child or adult with autism during or after the storm. I think sometimes too, people don't prepare mentally for the aftermath of the storm, and that it can be a much harder experience than the storm itself. Mm-hmm. Our colleague, Christine Mon, she oversees our satellite office that covers Lee, Charlotte, Collier, and Hendry counties. So when I was gathering information for this episode, she shared with me stories about how the damage caused by Hurricane Ian still continues to impact, you know, access to schools and other services and programs almost 9 months later. And, you know, the psychological and emotional impact on the whole community. You know, I bring this up not to be depressing, but to stress the importance of taking hurricane preparation seriously. You know, of course, you can't tell like a hurricane, oh, don't come here, you know, but like, so for kind of going back to an earlier example we mentioned already, you know, of having like, you know, your child's IEP and all those important documents, it's going to be much easier to help kind of navigate and trying to match up services and things like that if you have all of those things on hand, versus if you're trying to spend all that time trying to get that information and then you're going to have to advocate. You know, so this is what we mean by trying to do some of this preparation so that if, you know, worst case scenario in the aftermath, things will be easier for you and your loved ones. I'm also going to share links in the comments section to a number of resources. So we have our hurricane safety guide, hurricane social stories, our ASD in an emergency shelter tip sheet, and then on the back it's the communication card, a disaster supply checklist, and also a video series about the special needs shelter program for those who are wanting more information about those.
Mm-hmm. And it is
I
true.
think it's also, I'm sorry, Lourdes.
No, go ahead.
I think it's also important, you said it was depressing or Debbie Downer, but it's just a reality. I think that a lot of times in emergency situations, people with disabilities aren't thought about right away. You know, there's many stories I can share from when I was a kid during fire drills where we were kind of for lack of a better word, forgotten about. So I think this episode and just always having our loved ones with disabilities in mind with autism is really important. So I really appreciate you sharing all this information with us.
Yes. You see, I told you that she brings in a very important perspective to the show. So it is true. It's true that the aftermath is, we have Katrina to think about. When this happened in the Louisiana, New Orleans area, people who stay behind, they stayed behind. The storm passed, but it was weeks before they could get out of the area because of the flooding. And
Mm-hmm.
so how much happened during that period?
Or Hurricane Maria.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And so much that can happen after the fact. So being prepared and having things, your house might stand, but how is the area? How accessible is the area going to be, and how much access are you going to have to medications, to food, to supplies, and things like that. So maintaining always, and I know we get complacent. We've been here, those of us who've been living in this area, how many times you can cry wolf and nothing happens. We tend to, it's a human nature to get complacent, but it is to be taken seriously. The weather is not getting easier. It's getting worse every year. So it's a great information to be brought. And I think a great follow-up show would be how to handle going to different places, moving to different places, what considerations we need to keep in mind to help our loved ones with autism make that transition. Again, we did it in Spanish, and I share that on this same show in Spanish, but we don't have it in English to share. So I think it would be a good one to do in English to share. All right. But we do have tons of, like you said, tons of resources that you in English and Spanish that you're going to be sharing with our audience.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So great. So wonderful, wonderful show. Thank you very much for bringing us this information. So anyway, those of you who are watching us right now, if you would like to, or even after we go off the air, if you'd like to leave us some comments or questions, we'll be sure to monitor those and answer you, whether we are on the air or after we get off the air through the comment section. Remember that if we use your question or comment to create another program, we'll be sure to give you credit on the air for giving us that idea for bringing this show, the new show on the air, okay? So in the meantime, are there any, talking about that, any comments or questions we need to answer before we go off the air? Nope, none of this time. Okay, perfect. So I just want to thank you, Olivia and Christine Mogan and Adrian Brooks, for helping us bring this valuable information to our audience. Well done. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And also wanted to remind our audience that we are going to be on. We're always on every other week. So the next time we'll be back on will be July 14th. In the meantime, obviously, we want to wish you a happy 4th of July between now and then. Hope it is a safe one for all of you. Be sure to join us here in 2 weeks, again, July 14th. And also, I want to ask you a little favor, as I always do, and it's to please go in the link that we are going to be placing there in the comment section, where we ask you a few questions. It's a survey, real quick. It is the way that we can justify the time that it takes us to put together this type of programming and to be on the air with you. Even if you've done it before, this is how we can justify that. Every time we go on the air, we need one of those. So please, thank you, thank you, thank you for going ahead and filling that out. And we thank you for that. In the meantime, again, we want to wish you a wonderful holiday by then, and ask you to give us a like this program, share it with those who will benefit from this type of information. Share our page, and be sure to meet us here every other Friday at 10:45-ish, because we come the other show, so we can share a cup of coffee with you as we spill the beans on important topics related to autism. And until then, we want to wish you
Good
vibes and hot coffee.
Happy 4th of July, everyone. Take care.
Bye.